Welcome back, everybody. Now, author, poet and motivational speaker Thando Bam-Francis has released his latest collection of poetry book that he titled UNO FLATU in one breath. From losing his mother at a very young age to his battle with drug addiction, the read is a personal documentation of Thando's turbulent life and just how he emerged a better man from these unfavourable circumstances. And he now joins me in studio to help us explore further the contents of this book, UNO FLATU in one breath, and to talk us about the title. Now, Thando, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Also, it's a pleasure to be here, Simpiwe.
Yeah, talk to us about the title, UNO FLATU in one breath. What about this title and what inspired it?
Also, UNO FLATU in one breath. Well, the book in itself is somehow semi-biographical, you know. I wanted to encapsulate certain periods within my life, just then it being just mere words, you know. So during that phase in my life, I was working at a law firm, you know. So UNO FLATU it's a Latin legal term, you know, and which means in one breath, you know, and it means it's an inconsistent pleading in court, but however it's also reflective of the conflict that was happening within myself at the time, because when I wrote this book I was like in the height of my addiction. Yeah.
So what are some of the aspects of your life that inspired the book?
I mean, loss, you know, sadness, depression, and, you know, seeking oneself, you know, in this world. And you know, it was not an easy time at the time when I wrote the book. But I'm glad, though, you know, because it's also one of the motivating factors which pushed me to go towards my recovery, because it was upon completing this book, when I was about to publish it, when I got to retrospect and ask myself, like, what type of Thando will I be? What type of Thando do I want the people to receive out there? And then it pushed me to go into recovery, because at the time I was into drugs and alcohol, you know. And so I went into recovery so that I can be able to be a model citizen, you know, and just go beyond having beautiful words that are in text there.
So having gone through those hardships like drug addiction and losing your mom at a very tender age, how has that shaped the creative in you?
Man, a lot. Okay, in terms of my mom's, her passing had a huge impact in my life. And hence the Francis in my surname. Her second name was Francis, so I've added it as a pseudonym for when I'm writing books, Thando Bam-Francis, to acknowledge her, you know, to acknowledge her and to keep her memory alive. And obviously, for me, it becomes a matter of there are certain truths, you know, that at times we might find ourselves in compromising situations based either on our gender, race, or social class, you know. But there's what I call better truths, which are far more liberating, that you have the spirit to overcome with perseverance, determination, you know, and focus. And I choose to focus on the better truth.
And what sort of healing, if at all, did you get from writing this book?
I think it's still continuing. I'm still in the process, you know, because
it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress. Yeah. Yes, I'm happy that I have a book out, but for me it needs to translate to something else. To how do I inspire the next person? How do I become a better human being as well? You know.
Okay, now with February being Black History Month, what are your views in terms of South Africans telling their stories?
I think it's important, you know, that we tell our stories, you know, and particularly through text, you know, and hence also as well, you know, when writing UNO FLATU, what I strived to do with the book is to use simple text, simple words, so that it can seem attainable for a township kid, and it should not be something so distant to be able to tell your own story, to tell your narrative, because I think most of often than not, they have a certain impression on who you should be to be able to be a writer, you know. And I tried all means to make it accessible to a child in the township and an average black person. And I also think that stems from the fact that when I write, or my inspiration does not come mostly from fellow poets, but I look at the likes of Bob Marley, Bob Dylan, Steve Biko, people who are Jesus Christ, you know, who are able to take complex theories, you know, and be able to simplify them for the man on the ground. And that's what I strive to do.
And I think you can simplify that through your poems. Just give us one.
I certainly will. What I will do, I will give you a poem titled...
But you wrote the poems. Don't you know them off by head?
No, actually, I do. There are poems that I do know by head, and those are the ones. I'm also a performance poet. Are those that I perform on stage. But then these right here are strictly for the book, because I also had to because I don't know who the book might reach, so I had to be sure that.
Please be as brief as possible.
Picture this: taxi driver rude as ever, seated 4-4 to the back of the Siaya. We are clumsily squashed together. The Mozambican national on the seat in front of me takes out a swollen breast to silence the crying infant. And the lady on the left of me digs into her box of KFC. It's 3 twice 2 with pap. The gentleman on my right feels like the greasy fish and chips will do him right. And the formally dressed gentleman may be a businessman, but his iPad appears to be his best friend. Or maybe he could be chatting to one of his girlfriends. Or maybe his boyfriend. Caught up in my own thoughts, I don't care much. The teenage schoolgirl in a uniform has her headset on, and she too, obviously lost in her world. At a short left, the lady next to me gets off, and just as I'm about to enjoy my taxi ride, it's my turn to get off at the next stop.
Okay. And what's the message in that poem?
It's a South African story, you know, in terms of the type of taxis that we take, mode of transport. It's about the diversity that we have. And once again, it goes back that you can actually tell your story. The world is in need and is searching for just homegrown stories. You do not need to look far for inspiration.
All right, Thando, tell you what, I'm in awe, and thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me here with you.
Yeah, that's Thando Bam-Francis speaking to us about the release of his latest collection of poetry, a book titled UNO FLATU in One Breath. Now, that's a read that takes us on a journey of Thando's life, from the hardships he experienced and just how he turned his life around for the better. All right, now over to Pearl.
Cape Town City Ballet will be presenting an adaptation